Haruto was very young when he had to move away to a different home, leaving behind his first childhood love, Miharu. Before leaving, Haruto promised Miharu that he would come back and they would get married. Many years later, Haruto is now a college student. One day, as he is traveling by bus, he gets into an accident and gets hit by a passing train. Haruto dies while thinking about the promise he made to Miharu. But suddenly, he wakes up. However, he wakes up in a different body, in a different place called the Beltrum Kingdom. Here, his name is Ryo, a poor boy living in the slums. Ryo starts getting conflicting memories of his past life in modern Japan as Haruto and his present life as Ryo in this medieval world. In this world, he is poor, stinky, and living with some thugs. One day, they bring in a big sack and some food. But they treat Ryo worse than an animal and don't give him anything to eat. Ryo's main purpose in life is to avenge his mother, who was killed some time ago. One day, a group of high-class magicians demand to know if he has seen a purple-haired girl. Ryo does not reply. So a little girl named Celia talks to him in a kind manner. Celia uses a spell to check for any magic users in the area, but she finds out that Ryo has lots of magic potential. She gives him some coins for helping them out and goes away. They're all big silver coins, which shocks Ryo. He goes back to his home, but a man tries to stab him and accidentally hits the coins. All the other men are dead. The masked man comes after him when suddenly, a projection of a strange spirit appears before him and shows him how to use magic. He uses it and his martial skills as Haruto and knocks out the man. Suddenly, the sack from earlier starts moving. When he looks inside, it's a purple-haired girl. Her name is Flora, and she asks to be taken back to the castle. Then she faints. Ryo carries Flora out but runs into the girls again. Flora's sister Christina slaps him thinking that he was kidnapping Flora. Turns out, Flora and Christina are the princesses of the Beltrum Kingdom. She continues provoking Ryo. So, their leader, Vanessa, stops her and takes Ryo with them to the castle. Later, the castle guards come to investigate, and the masked man from earlier is still alive. So, a mysterious man in the crowd breaks a crystal, which kills him. Later, Ryo is trapped in prison and beaten by the vice-captain of the guards, Charles, until he is forced to say that he kidnapped Princess Flora. But Ryo was not involved in the kidnapping, so he does not say anything. Meanwhile, Flora wakes up and commands Vanessa to arrange the release of Ryo. Vanessa and Celia go to save Ryo, and they are shocked at the way Charles has been torturing Ryo. They save Ryo and Charles walks away angrily. Celia heals Ryo and he wakes up after some time. She informs him that the king will be thanking him in person. Ryo gets a new haircut and a brand new uniform like Jack from Titanic. Then he meets the royal family. As a reward for saving Princess Flora, the royal family enrolls Ryo into the Royal Magic Academy as a scholarship student. Celia will be his teacher, and he will be studying alongside children who were all born to nobility. When they find out that Ryo is from the slums, they immediately regard him with disgust, especially Princess Christina, who is his classmate. Ryo does not know how to read and write the language of this world, so Celia gives him private tuition. Celia is actually only 12 years old, but her advanced mind led her to graduate high school at such a young age, and now she's their teacher. Once Ryo understands the writing script, he can do the simple multiplication and division with ease since he was a university student in his previous life after all. He lies by saying that he learnt it all from his mother. During their sword training sessions, he uses the katana techniques that he learnt in his previous life, and the instructor is quite impressed with him. He says that Ryo can become a fine knight, but Ryo says that he has no interest in being a knight, to everyone's shock. Soon, their end-of-term exams arrive, and Ryo has already learnt the language by now. So, the kid-level examination is really easy for a former university-level student like him. He tops the class, right alongside Princess Christina. One of the rich kids, Alphonse, claims that Ryo cheated and starts yelling at him. But Christina and Celia shut down Alphonse, claiming that Ryo achieved this with his own hard work. 5 years later, and Ryo has now grown up into a tall young man. An exhibition tournament for the knights will be organized. 3 students are selected from their class, including Ryo and Alphonse. Alphonse is angry that a lowborn like Ryo has been selected, but he can't say anything about it, for now. Celia says that if he does well at the tournament, then the knights might scout him before he even graduates. But Ryo has no intention of that, and he wants to travel after graduating. His parents' homeland is outside this kingdom, and he wants to go to the place where his parents came from. His mother had always planned to take him there when he grew up. The day of the tournament arrives. Ryo's first opponent is none other than Charles, the man who tortured him 5 years ago. Turns out, Charles got a demotion after the incident, and he blames Ryo for that. And Ryo blames him for, well, all that torturing. Ryo uses his katana techniques and beats him quite easily. Charles starts making excuses, but the referee knight scolds him and tells him to accept defeat like a man. Charles admits defeat, and Celia and Rio's instructor clap for him. That night, Charles rants about his defeat to Rice, an ambassador of a neighboring kingdom. He tells Rice about the kidnapping incident 5 years ago and how Rio saved the princess. Rice is intrigued because this is the same mysterious man who killed the masked man with magic back then. Later, Rio gets a confession from a girl showing that he is starting to become popular. Celia sees this and actually gets jealous. Later, another noble kid, Stuart, accuses Rio of flirting with the girls and how his win in the tournament was only a fluke. Stuart also teases him because Rio cannot use magic like the rest of them. Rio does not fight back and walks away. Flora is sad to see him suffering like this, while she herself has not been able to repay him for saving her 5 years ago. Later, they have an outdoor training exercise where they separate into units, and they must travel to a location before sunset. Rio, the 2 princesses, and Alphonse are put in the same unit among other students. Since Rio cannot use magic, Alphonse and Stuart force him to carry all their stuff, which Princess Flora does not like. They run into some goblins, but the rich kids use magic to fight them back. Then they reach a cliff. As they are about to turn back, they are attacked by strong orcs. The kids get into a confusion, and Stuart accidentally pushes Flora down the cliff. So, Rio jumps after her and uses a different kind of magic to safely push her back to the cliff. Then, Alphonse actually organizes the students into proper battle formation, and they beat the orcs. Meanwhile, Rio does not understand what just happened. He's sure that he did not use traditional magic, but it was magic of some kind. Meanwhile, the other kids ask who pushed Flora off the cliff. Stuart, who actually pushed Flora, denies it and blames Rio instead. What an asshat. Since no one saw anything, they're not sure if Rio is guilty or not. And Flora herself is a little confused, so when she tries to defend Rio, no one takes her seriously. Rio overhears the whole thing. Suddenly, an even more powerful monster appears. None of their attacks are of any use, and one of the rich kids even gets injured. Flora tries to heal him, but the monster traps her. So, Rio comes and cuts off the monster's arm. They get into an intense battle, but Rio uses all his training to finally defeat it. Just then, the other kids come there, so he walks away secretly. Rice sees the whole thing and laughs like a villain. That night, Celia overhears the noblemen talking. They must either blame Rio or Stuart for pushing the princess. They decide to blame Rio since blaming Stuart would weaken his family's standing in court and cause all sorts of internal turmoil. Later, Rio sneaks into her workroom and tells her everything. He knows that no one will acknowledge his words because he's not nobility with his own political powers. So now, he's decided to leave the Beltrum kingdom and go to his parents' hometown, Yagumo. He says that he will use a fake name, Haruto, which is actually his real name from his other life. Rio and Celia promise to write to each other and they hug one last time before departing. After Rio leaves, Celia starts weeping. Meanwhile, a member of Stuart's noble family gives Rio's clothes to an assassin girl named Latifa, telling her to remember Rio's smell and kill him. 3 days later, Rio is traveling in the forest when Latifa ambushes him. She hits him with a poison needle, so he quickly neutralizes it using the same strange magical force. They get into an intense battle, and both of them are shocked by each other's abilities. Rio finally uses some grappling techniques and knocks her out. Then, he ties her up. He sees a collar of submission on her neck, which was probably why she's trying to kill him. He remembers his studies and uses them to destroy the collar. Turns out Latifa is actually a modern-day girl named Suzune, who was also on that bus when Rio got into the accident. When she woke up as Latifa, a slave under Stuart and his family. Stuart has been using the collar to torture her ever since she came to this world. Rio shows her that he took the collar out, and she cries out of happiness. She tells that it was Stuart's family who sent her after him, and Rio realizes that it's probably to shut him up and remove all evidence of the recent incident. He frees her and sends her on her way. Latifa is a beast person, and she does not know where others of her kind are, so she follows him. Despite his reluctance, Rio allows it. He even gives her good food to eat, and she cries while eating it. Turns out, Stuart used to feed her only pet food. That night, when they are sleeping, she cries in her sleep, saying that she wants to go to Tokyo. Rio realizes that she's also from their world. The next morning, Latifa asks if she can call him Big Brother. Rio allows it. The two of them continue on their journey, going through many adventures together. One day, they reach a forest with a huge tree. For some reason, Latifa can't see it. They camp in the forest. That night, a strange wolf comes to them and glows with a blue light. They are all beast people or demi-humans like Latifa. They do not trust humans because of humanity's mistreatment of demi-humans. So, they attack Rio out of suspicion. They also see Latifa sleeping in the tent and believe that he kidnapped her. So they knock him out. He goes into a dreamy state where he sees the same spirit girl from 5 years ago. She says that she doesn't know who she herself is. She tells him to stay strong, and then she disappears. As he's waking up, he calls out the name of his childhood love, Miharu. The other demi-humans are sitting around Rio, and he is chained to the bed. Latifa comes running in and hugs him, saying that he actually saved her, not kidnapped her. The other girls bow down before him and apologize. Then they free Rio from his chains. The next day, one of the elders, Ursula, shows him around the place. Ursula says that the giant tree is the world tree, and it contains a mighty tree spirit inside. It also has a high-level illusion spell surrounding it, and only people with an affinity for the spirit arts can see it, meaning Rio must have such an affinity. Then, Ursula and two other village elders formally apologize to Rio. Rio also apologizes for entering their domain without permission. Rio asks them to take in Latifa, as she belongs here with her people. The elders agree, as they were hoping to raise Latifa anyways. Since Latifa has grown attached to him, Rio decides to stay here for some time. Suddenly, the spirit of the world tree herself, Dryas, appears before them. Dryas says that she senses a spirit within him. Containing a spirit can result in the inability to use magic, which explains why Rio has not been able to use magic like his classmates. She checks inside him, and finds out that there is a person-shaped spirit inside of him, which is apparently super-duper rare. Even Dryas is of a lower-level spirit compared to the one inside of Rio. The elders treat him with even more respect now. Rio stays a while in that village, and the people teach him everything they know about controlling the spirit arts. He gets to know the people and their culture, spending lots of quality time with them. Rio and Latifa live with them for 1 year. Meanwhile, Rice takes one of his subordinates and steals a dragon's eggs. The dragons get really angry and come after them. Back in the forest, the village officially accepts Latifa as a resident of the village after having lived here for 1 year. Dryas kisses Rio and Latifa to give them her blessings. That night, there are lots of festivities to celebrate this event. Rio finally decides to tell Latifa that he will be leaving the village. Latifa immediately says that she'll go with him, but he refuses because he himself does not know the dangers involved. Latifa gets upset and runs away. Meanwhile, Rice and this helper enter the forest area while the dragons continue chasing them. The village elders sense this new activity and immediately go on high alert. The warriors go to confirm what is happening. Elsewhere, Rice has put his subordinate as bait, but the dude does not realize it yet. Rice gives him a red pill to eat in case of danger. Then, he himself goes to the dragon nest, which is now unguarded. He takes this sweet time stealing the eggs. Back in the forest, the demi-humans confront Rice's helper, but he swallows the red pill and tries to escape. But he gets attacked by the dragon. Rice finishes stealing all the eggs, so he crushes another red pill and the helper dies. The demi-humans try their best to steer the dragons away from their village. The egg falls and breaks in front of Latifa, and the dragon goes mad with anger. Rio realizes that she's in danger and runs into the forest. Just as she's about to be eaten, he arrives and hammer kicks the dragon. The dragon tries to attack him with fire, but Rio sends it into its own mouth, and the dragon implodes from the inside. A demi-human warrior is amazed that Rio did this quite easily. Since the biggest dragon is dead, the rest of the dragons fly away. The next morning, Latifa apologizes for causing so much trouble, and accepts the fact that Rio will be leaving. Rio tells her that he'll be going to the Yagumo region, the land of his ancestors. Then they finally tell each other about their previous lives in Japan, and how they were reincarnated into this world. As he's about to leave, the 3 village elders give him parting gifts: a sword that can utilize his spirit arts, an armor made from the skin of the dragon that he killed, secret medicines and elixirs, and finally a space-time cache that can store all his items. They all wish him well while Rio continues on his journey. Rio finally reaches Yagumo and meets the village head, Yuba. Rio tells Yuba that he wants to know more about his parents who came from this region. He wants to make graves in the memory of his dead parents. Yuba confirms that she does indeed know his parents. Kaos, she's Rio's father's mother, that is, Rio's grandmother. Yuba says that they've already erected graves for his parents, and she takes him so he can pay his respects. She says that the 2 of them had to leave this country for a secret reason. Rio asks for the secret reason, but Yuba does not reveal it. Yuba invites him to stay in the village and offers to hide his lineage from the others until he's ready to reveal it himself. Rio has one cousin, Ruri, who is a loud and extroverted kind of girl. She's 15 years old, 1 year older than Rio. He also meets Ruri's best friend Sayo, and Sayo's older brother Shin. Shin takes Rio hunting with him and is shocked by how skilled Rio is. Shin's teacher, the Huntmaster, praises Rio, making Shin quite jealous. Rio continues doing lots of cool things, like building a hot bath and helping out in the fields. All the girls are attracted to him. And Shin? Well, he hates it. One day, the son of the neighboring village's head, Gon, comes with his bad guys and causes trouble. Gon makes fun of Shin, and flirts with Ruri and Sayo. Things get bad and Shin punches him, but Gon beats him quite easily. Yuba arrives on time and stops the fight. As he's leaving, Gon kicks Ryo's legs, but gets knocked down instead. Shin asks Yuba to let Sayo sleep with her. That night, Ryo gives Sayo and Ruri a red gem to keep in their room to protect them. One day, the tax examiner for the region, Hayate, arrives at their village, and they take good care of him, hosting him nice and well. That night, Gon and his men enter the girls' room and try to force themselves on them. But Ryo arrives. The scene reminds him of the time that his mother was killed, so he kicks the crap out of Gon and his men. Then he punches Gon in the face until he turns into spaghetti. The tax examiner, Hayate, has to come and stop him. He uses his own spirit arts to find out the truth from Gon, who confesses that he tried to assault the girls. Ryo walks away and thinks about how he just almost killed someone. He realizes that he's forgotten his desire for revenge and decides to focus on killing the man who killed his mother. The next day, Hayate takes Gon and his men into custody, while Yuba and the girls thank Ryo for saving them. Soon, Hayate goes to examine the crops in the next village. Yuba gives him a letter for his father. While he goes to the next village, his guards take the tax crops to the capital, with Ryo, Sayo, Shin, and a few other villagers guarding them. They take the crops to the capital city and drop them off to the government. They also hand over Gon and his men to the prison. Then, they go around town enjoying the place. Ryo buys a pretty hair clip for Sayo, which really suits her. Later, a noblewoman named Komomo is almost kidnapped by some thugs, but Ryo jumps in and saves her. Then he quickly departs the area. Meanwhile, Hayate gives the letter from Yuba to his father Guki, who reads it and immediately becomes shocked. Guki finds Ryo and tells him the truth about Ryo's family. That Ryo's mother Ayame was the princess of the royal family, and his father Zen was the best warrior in their kingdom responsible for guarding Princess Ayame. Over time, Zen and Ayame fell in love. At that time, they were at war with a neighboring kingdom, but they were finally about to sign a truce. However, the prince of that neighboring kingdom tried to kidnap Ayame, so Zen killed the kidnapper. This caused all sorts of political issues. So Ayame's father, the king, secretly arranged for Ayame and Zen to escape to another kingdom. Then Guki takes Ryo to visit the king and queen. Ryo finally gets to meet his grandparents from his mother's side. They welcome Ryo as he's their only grandchild. Then Ryo tells them about his parents. His father died when he was too young to remember him. His mother, the princess, was killed by a man named Lucius. Lucius was actually a friend of Zen, and he'd helped them in many ways. But one day, he forced himself into their home and made Ryo drink some liquid. Then, he stabbed Ayame to death. The king says that the path of revenge is self-destructive and it's best to avoid it. But Ryo is determined to kill the man who killed his mother. So the king asks him to spar with Guki to see if he's ready. After all, Guki is the best fighter in this kingdom right now. Ryo goes to Guki's home where he finds out that the girl he saved earlier, Komomo, is actually Guki's younger daughter. Then, Ryo and Guki have a spar, and Ryo actually manages to impress him. Even when he uses spirit art, Ryo defeats him. Everyone is shocked because they've never seen Guki defeated. The king and queen give Ryo their blessings. Ryo also reveals to Ruri that he's a prince. Then he says that he'll leave this village within 1 year. He continues living the simple village life with everyone. After a few months, he tells Sayo that he'll be leaving after the harvest. Sayo becomes sad and cries. That night, Shin sees Sayo crying, and he also finds out that Ryo will be leaving. So he goes to Ryo and begs him to stay. But Sayo comes and stops him before he can say anything more. Life goes on as normal. While Sayo works in the field every day, she secretly practices her spirit arts every night. Soon, the harvest time comes, and the village holds a festival to celebrate. While they are celebrating, Sayo takes Ryo to the side and confesses that she's in love with him. She asks him to take her with him. She says that she has practiced her spirit arts and will not hold him back. But Ryo says that he cannot return her feelings and apologizes. Shin overhears the whole thing. So does Guki. The next morning, Ryo bids farewell to Yuba and Ruri and leaves. At the village gate, Sayo is waiting for him. This time she does not ask him to take her with him. She simply wishes him the best of luck on his journey. Ryo thanks her and leaves. Then he goes to the demi-human's village to meet Latifa and the others. Everyone welcomes him and they share their adventures. Ryo says that he'll stay for a few months this time, and he asks the elders to make him a house that he can carry in his space-time cache. The next morning, Ryo wakes up and finds a naked girl sleeping next to him, causing all sorts of ruckus in the process. The girl says that she's the spirit within him, the one that Dryas talked about earlier. She does not know how she got into Ryo, and how this whole thing works. She doesn't even know her own name. Also, she keeps calling Ryo by his Japanese name, Haruto. The others ask him what that means, but he deflects the question for now. Then the spirit girl talks to Ryo through telepathy and promises not to reveal his secret to anyone. Then she uses magic to make herself new clothes, Frozen Elsa style. Her beauty and mannerism kind of reminds Ryo of his childhood love, Miharu. So he gives her a new name, Aishia, which means warm spring. Then they introduce Aishia to the elders and Lady Dryas. Aishia tells them that she does not have any of her past memories, only that she's bonded to Ryo. Also, she's proficient in all the elements, which is quite surprising. Then, Ryo has a practice match with Aishia to get to know her strength. Turns out she's pretty damn powerful, countering everything that Ryo throws at her. Dryas stops the match, and everyone is impressed by how powerful Aishia is. Dryas offers to share the knowledge of the spirits with her. They spend the next few months in the village, learning more and more about the spirit arts and enjoying the simple life. One day, one of the elders prepares a house carved out of a rock which Ryo can carry with him in his space-time cache. So Ryo announces that he'll leave in 2 days. Since Ryo has not been spending enough time with Latifa, they decide to have a bath together. During that time, they talk about the bus accident and find out that they were both on the same bus that day. Soon, Ryo leaves again. This time he gets even more gifts. A teleportation stone that will help him teleport back to the village. A pin that will change his hair color. Then, Ryo and Aishia leave. He says that he needs to meet Celia first. Meanwhile, Celia is still holding on to the letter that Ryo sent her many years ago. Turns out, she is being courted by that idiot Charles. Ryo and Aishia arrive at the capital of the Beltram Kingdom, which seems to be busy with more people. Ryo changes his hair color and asks what's happening. Turns out, Charles is getting married. Later, he sneaks into Celia's research room, but it's empty. He hypnotizes another professor and asks what's happening. Turns out, Charles is getting married to Celia. The man gives all the details. This is not a marriage of love, but purely politics. Recently, the Beltram Kingdom lost a war to Rice's kingdom, the Proxy Kingdom. However, Charles's family managed to save the kingdom in the end. Thus, the royal family lost significant power, and Charles's family is now more influential. On top of that, their rival family, the family of Stuart, also fled the kingdom. So there isn't many rivals to oppose Charles's family. In order to gain more power, they are targeting a marriage with Celia's family. Ryo decides to meet Celia. Meanwhile, Celia is having dinner with her father, Count Claire, and Charles. Charles indirectly makes fun of Count Claire because he himself is from a higher family. That night, Ryo finds out Celia's room, and he sneaks in, changing his hair back to normal so that she can recognize him. Celia immediately hugs him because they're meeting after 4 years. They catch up a little bit. After that, Ryo asks her if she really wants to marry a man like Charles. She does not say anything about love, but she just says that this is her own decision. Then, she asks him to leave. Ryo respects her feelings and leaves for now. Then, he tells Aishia that he plans to find out the real reason why Celia is marrying a man like Charles. The next day, preparations for the marriage begin. Rice comes as a representative of the Proxy Kingdom. He suddenly senses the presence of a very strong spirit, probably Aishia. Meanwhile, Charles introduces Celia to his wives. You heard me, his wives. 6 of them, in fact. The first wife, Tenesina, immediately tries to assert her dominance over Celia. Tenesina and the other wives try to bully Celia, but just then, Princess Christina arrives. Christina sends the others away and chats with Celia about recent events. Turns out, when Stuart's family ran away from the kingdom, they kidnapped Princess Flora along with them. Also, Charles's family is starting to dominate the royal family in terms of politics, and Christina does not like that, blaming her parents for being weak. Later, their marriage procession begins, and all the citizens are impressed by Celia's beauty and Charles's family powers. Charles admits that he plans to take over this kingdom soon. They reach the main location and the couple prepares to get off. Suddenly, Ryo runs towards them. Ryo defeats all the elite guards of the kingdom and punches Charles. Then he puts a knife on Celia's neck and uses Aishia's telepathy to talk to her mentally. He explains that this is just an act to get her out of her burden. He once again asks if she really wants this marriage because he knows that Charles's family is dominating all the noble families, including Celia's. Celia admits that she does not want to get married, so Ryo says that he will kidnap her and take her away. That way, her family won't be blamed. So Celia accepts his offer. Ryo screams to everyone that his quarrel is with Charles. He wants to humiliate him, so that's why he's abducting Celia right on their wedding day. He takes her away while Celia pretends to ask Charles for help. Ryo easily evades all the guards using his spirit arts, and Rice recognizes him from that long time ago in their academy outdoors training. So, he throws a huge attack at him to test him, and Ryo blocks it, impressing Rice. Rio continues running away with Celia while the aerial soldiers chase after him. So he jumps into an alley and hands over Celia to Aisha. Then he goes back to the roofs and continues his battle. Just then, the best knight in the kingdom, Alfred, comes after him, and they get into a battle. Alfred is way strong with his magical sword, so Rio runs away for now. He meets up with Celia and Aisha on the outskirts of the town. They are now ready to start a happy life. Suddenly, huge and powerful beams of energy appear out of the ground all around them. Suddenly, we see a bit of Miharu in Aisha. She begs Rio to save them, but Rio doesn't know who them means. Meanwhile, nearby, 3 Japanese kids appear in this world. However, they are caught by some bandits. But just then, Rio arrives and kills these men. Then, he releases the 3 people. However, one of them turns out to be Miharu, his childhood love.